Hello and welcome back to the Ghoul Association, the show where we talk about all things Gothic and pop culture, and you join us as part of our very top secret society. We are, of course, your Ghoul Guides. My name is Lauren.
And I'm Mary.
And today it's a Mary episode.
Yeah, we're doing another deep dive into my kind of unofficial mini series about
Saints
and martyrs, which I think I actually in the last one got the title wrong, but I'm calling it the Gothic Lives of Saints and Martyrs. The kind of the reason why I'm doing this, where it all comes from, is I was writing a piece for this this 4K Blu-ray film of Martyrs, a recent French extremity film. If you haven't bought this, I think it is actually sold out now. But you might be able to get it like, you know, on those secondhand sellers. But it is
on eBay or something.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a really great edition. It has loads of amazing special features. I'm not blowing my own trumpet there. There's loads of special features on this. With
I'll blow it. Mary's on there and it's great.
Yeah, including Xavi Aldana Reyes. Lots of great kind of film and horror scholars. This is very much a film for it's French extremity horror, so it is, if you're squeamish, not for you. But when I was researching this film called Martyrs, I wrote a piece. I contributed a piece to this release on the kind of the importance of the kind of historical narrative and theological narratives of Christian martyrs and saints. And I was reading and researching a lot about these different individuals, real life individuals, some of whom, like you and I, have been familiar to somewhat before. But I was like, you know what, these people are really interesting, and a lot of their lives, or a lot of their alleged lives, because there is that kind of balance between what actually happened in their stories. What is
hagiographies are not necessarily the most historically accurate of texts,
yes.
are they?
Yeah, exactly. But there was so much in these stories, these individuals, their lives, that was so Gothic. It was just so gothically infused that I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do some deep dives into some of the more Gothic stories of these people. So if you missed it, last year for our Christmas special, we did our first saintly deep dive into Saint Nicholas, also known as Santa Claus. But today episode,
the red man.
yeah. But yeah, do check that out as well if you want to explore the Gothic elements of his life. But today's episode, we are looking at Saint Catherine of Siena.
Oh,
so Lauren,
I know about this one.
You know, okay, good. Yeah,
I think so.
Bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, by the end of the episode, Lauren and all of you, dear listeners, will be experts in the Gothic life of Saint Catherine of Siena.
Saint Catherine. Is this the Saint Catherine that the Catherine wheel comes from?
I don't think so.
Okay, because I know there's there's more than one Catherine. And
yeah,
that's where it gets confusing.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's not like because that's why it's like Saint Catherine of this place and then this place. Because turns out, guys, Catherine, real popular name,
very popular
amongst medieval Christians.
Before we get into her life, I'm glad that you mentioned hagiographies at the start. So hagiographies, they're a specific kind of biography about saints that kind of weave together historical details about an individual with myths, legends, miracles, alleged miracles connected to this individual that then present the person as a saint. So that's what a hagiography is. And for this episode, I will be using one of St. Catherine's hagiography as a kind of source for for her life, and that is The Life of Saint Catherine of Siena, very original title.
Yeah.
It was first published in 1477, and it was written by Raymond of Capua, who was a leading member of the Dominican order, who was also at one point Catherine's spiritual director, her confessor, and a friend. So there was a period of her life where they were very intimately connected, and he was her confessor, and so he has quite a lot of personal details of her. So it is someone who is, he was there for some of it, and
Yeah.
also he's got her accounts. She's spoken to him in this very private confessional manner, so there is a kind of, I guess, a legitimacy to some parts of what he's saying.
Yeah, because some of
In
the hagiographies are like about much earlier saints,
Yes,
for
yeah,
example, and
yeah,
they are, you know, a combination of oral histories rather than, I mean, the same can be said of the New Testament, but they're written sort of like
yeah.
10, 20, if not more years later by people who didn't actually know them firsthand.
Yeah. And I think that is really important to kind of, and as we delve into more saints, as I'm sure we will, to delve into that kind of distinction between writing about someone whose life. I mean, we saw this actually with Saint Nick. There were a lot of
Hmm.
hagiographies that kind of melded together different individuals, because there is
Hmm.
that confusion, because these people weren't writing about
Yeah.
someone that they knew. But that is the case with Raymond. And I also think what's interesting about Raymond is that, especially in the latter half, the bit where he knew her, he positions himself as a witness to her
Yeah.
miracles. So actually, yeah, mentioning the New Testament is important, because you have that idea of there needs to be a witness. Someone
Yeah.
needs to witness these miracles.
Witness me.
Yeah. So that is the kind of basis for what I will, the foundations of
Hmm.
uh, Catherine of Siena's life, and where I'll be drawing this information from. Um, so Catherine was born Caterina di Jacoba de Biennacassa. She was born on the 25th of March in 1347 in Siena, which is a part of Italy. Obviously, Italy wasn't, Italy in the kind of 14th to 15th century wasn't
Well, it's a
unified in
lot
the
of
way.
ducalities,
Yeah,
principalities,
exactly.
separate kingdoms.
But she is
Wasn't
very
unified
much,
until
yeah.
more recently.
I think she is a patron saint of Italy now. But she, she's from Italy. She's
Probably.
from a place
I
called
when we
Siena.
were when we were in Madrid, I saw lots of
Mm.
um icons of Saint Catherine.
Yeah, yeah,
Because there's like her Saint Catherine, Saint Lucy, and one of the other major female saints that are often like depicted together as
yeah,
well.
yeah. She's very important, and I think as we delve into her history, I think we can see why. So she was born to a very, very poor family, not like really poor, to the fact that she was, homeless or those kinds of things,
Not
but
like destitute.
not destitute. Her family did have some servants, but they weren't by any of the means like rich. And she
Yeah.
was also born a twin. And Catherine and her twin were
Mm.
the 25th child to her parents. I
That
think
is an
partly,
inappropriate number of children.
I know, I know. I don't even think that Catherine was the last child that they had, but I think it was in, Catholic, poor, and also at a period where children often wouldn't survive. And in fact, that
Yes,
is
it was
the
a
case
lot.
for Catherine's twin, who didn't
Yeah,
survive.
like 25 children doesn't mean 25 living children into adulthood,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. And I think because of that, what happened in her early kind of months, she, I think her twin sister went to a wet nurse, and her mother was
Nursed her.
breastfeeding her. And she had a very strong connection to Catherine, that I think was even more so when her twin died, because her mother was
Yeah.
like, this is, I need to care for this child, and I love this child. So she was very much loved and cared for by her family, not necessarily more than the other children, but there is a kind of a speciality there, and a
Yeah,
connection
that
there.
makes sense.
Um, Raymond, in his hagiography, claims that when Catherine was about 5 or 6, she actually experienced her first saintly visions. So I think we're talking about her like growing up and her being a very young child, and I think it is interesting that it's from this age we have these claims that she has these experiences here. At I mean, my niece is just about to turn 5, and it's weird to
Yeah,
think about.
I can't imagine, like
Yeah. um
I'm just thinking about, I mean, my niece is 7 now, but I'm just thinking about, like, when she was 5, like, if she just suddenly, like, I don't know, eyes rolled back in her head and she started, like,
yeah.
proselytizing, I think I'd have been like, "She's having an epileptic fit, we need to go to the doctor."
Well, yeah, and I do think that there is a kind of, we do have to be careful with Catherine's life for those exact reasons,
Oh,
as I think
okay.
will become clear. But so at
Mhm.
5, she would essentially continually recite the Ave Maria, which is one of the most important prayers in
Yeah.
Catholicism. So you have the Our Father, or the Lord's Prayer, which is the most important prayer that you pray to God. The Ave Maria is one specifically to the Virgin Mary. But yeah, 5 years old, reciting this all over everywhere, all parts of the house, just reciting it. Okay. Not weird, but okay. Then at 6, so with her brother, she had
Mhm.
visited one of their sisters. So they're quite a large family.
Well, I was
Some
gonna
of her
say, I'm
siblings
imagining that
already
probably
married.
the older siblings are, like, 20
Yeah.
years older, probably.
Yeah. So they had gone to visit their sister, and then on the way back, she experienced a vision. So I'm going to quote from Raymond's hagiography
Okay.
here. So the children were returning by the valley known as the Valley Piata when Catherine, raising her eyes to heaven, saw opposite to her on the gable end of the church of the friar preachers a splendid throne occupied by our Lord Jesus Christ, clothed in pontifical ornaments and his sacred brow adorned with a tiara. At his side were St. Peter, St. Paul, and St. John the Evangelist. Catherine stood still, ravished with admiration and contemplation with love to him who thus manifested himself to her in order to captivate more fully her devoted heart. The Saviour gave her a look of serene majesty, smiled upon her with benign tenderness, and then, extending his hand, gave her his blessing in the form of cross, as is customary with bishops. From this moment, Catherine seemed to be no longer a child. Her virtues, her manners, and her thoughts were superior to her age and would have done honour to men of many mature years. The fire of divine love inflamed her heart and enlightened her understanding.
And she's 6.
So she's 6 years old. This is quite intense. This is
Yeah,
quite detailed. So there are
yeah.
these other saintly figures and also Jesus.
Jesus
And then
himself.
yeah, and quite, ornamented in all of this finery. So we can think about, the
Mm,
importance of those kinds of adornments in Catholicism. And then she's having this really personal, intimate connection, allegedly,
yeah.
with where it's almost as if she's now no longer a child. Um, yeah, so I think
Mm.
it
It's giving, I don't wanna be disrespectful,
no,
but when I was an undiagnosed autistic 6-year-old, I had very similar feelings about Star Wars,
yeah,
and, like, the repetition and like, seeing the vision, like, and I do often, we talk about this quite a lot, like, from everything from, like, the Oracle of Delphi to, like, saints, for those of us that are atheist or agnostic, whatever it may be, like, we I still believe those people saw and heard and experienced the things they saw and heard and experienced. So where does that come from? And it does make me wonder, like, that level of obsession from a small child, like the repetition and like the looking out and seeing things, like, yeah, it's giving neurodiverse.
Oh no, 100%. And I think that repetition there is very, very important, and almost this like obsessiveness, this interest in religion, you know, the fact that if this is true, um as a 6-year-old she would be that familiar with
Yeah.
these individuals, to the extent, you know, I mean, like you said with Star Wars, it is that kind of, if that's what you're familiar with, if that's what's at your house, if you're being taken to church on a weekly
Yeah.
basis, you're reading from the Bible, you're being
Yeah.
told about this culture, this society, it's
Well,
what
I
will
can
be at the
only
forefront of your mind.
in 14th century Siena,
Mm.
we are talking about like the heart of Catholicism in terms of like Italy.
Yeah,
Like I can
yeah.
only imagine, especially a family of that size, like faith must have been a huge, huge part of the everyday. And I think particularly with Catholicism compared to some of the other um denominations, because there is so much like chanting and repetition and
Yeah.
like, you know, you give confession, like there is something that I think, you know, probably scratches a spicy brain.
I agree, and I think this is just the start of what I think becomes quite
Hmm.
frequent in Catherine's life. Um,
Interesting.
so from this point onwards, Catherine then spent her youth unconventionally, and I think already bringing up the kind of neurodiverse thing is interesting because there is a sense of her being different
Hmm.
from her family, and being very steadfast in what she wants compared to what they expect of her. um I she would frequently fast, and she would try and eat as little as possible. And so, for example, if she had any meat on her plate, she would give it to her brothers, or throw it away. And I think here we do have to be careful in terms of her. Going forward, there will be a lot of kind of discussion of her diet and disordered
Hmm.
eating. So if that triggers you, here's a trigger warning, a content warning. I should have
Hmm.
put that at the start. I'll put it in the description. But yeah, this episode has a lot of that.
Hmm.
So be mindful, and if you need to kind of step away, then that's fine. But she has a
Yeah.
lot of this disordered eating, and I wonder, again, thinking about like neurodiverse people, and also people with what is it, where you can't eat certain foods because they
ARFID.
are fit. Yeah, it's difficult. I'm not trying to diagnose her,
Yeah, like
obviously,
you
but
know, we're
it's
scholars. We don't
no,
diagnose and assume, but like we can discuss and we can posit
yeah.
and we can pontificate.
But I think in that context of growing up in a society where Catholicism was very much an everyday part of life, it would be quite easy to kind of match up potential,
Yeah.
um exist aspects of yourself that then fit into that. And the repetition, I think, is also um a big part of that as well, that would be quite appealing perhaps to someone
Yeah.
who is
Well,
neurodiverse or
particularly autistic people, we like rituals and routines, and you know what has a lot of rituals and routines?
yeah,
Catholicism.
yeah. um, she was often in prayer, and she
Yeah.
would even preach to her friends. So this seems like a normal, like, child thing to do. Some children like to go around and play doctors and nurses, or play family. Not suggesting that she's playing here, but that idea that you would gather your friends together, and it would be like, this is what we're doing today. So that, I think, actually seems quite quite normal.
Hmm.
She then so she made a vow to be a virgin, and also to devote herself to God. And I think this bit I specifically put in here for you, Lauren, because I thought you would find it amusing. But according to Raymond, she stated that nothing was more painful to her than to see men in general, or any one specific man. calling calling God calling God her, quote, divine spouse. So I just
I
think
I mean, I have said this so many times, like, I think in hindsight, if I had been born in Catholic Europe, I probably would have just been a nun so that I
yeah.
could read and not have to be around men. But it's such a good line. It pains me to look upon men.
And I think she's obviously, this is obviously in a kind of romantic and marital context. She
Mhm,
doesn't want to be around men who might want to flirt with her or potentially become marital suitors. This is in her childhood though, and I think it is interesting that she has this idea and she sticks to it. And I
mhm.
think, if that's her choice that she makes, then okay, great. I just really found that phrasing quite amusing. Um, her family were quite persistent in trying to get her to get married. So I think also part of the reason why she was quite steadfast was because it was in opposition to what other people were trying to make her do. And at one point, so they had this friend of the family who was also a preacher. I think he was one of their priests. Um, they sent Catherine to him in order so that he could help to encourage her to get married. She explained, "No, I've pledged this vow of virginity, and I see myself. I'm devoted to God. I see God as my divine spouse." And he was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay, then no, that makes perfect sense to me. Why don't you cut off your hair so that you will be less attractive to men?" And so she does that. She cuts off her hair and she starts trying to hide this from her mum. And I was like, why are you like wearing a scarf all the time? Takes it off and then is horrified. So she's 16 at this point. She's horrified that her
Okay.
young daughter has cut off her hair.
Yeah.
But I think it is this idea that at very young, so now she's a teenager, but from her childhood to her teenage years,
She's been,
she's
like, committed to the same idea for the entire
very
time.
committed,
Yeah.
very committed. And in many ways, I think it's actually quite admirable.
Mm.
In She makes her choice and she sticks with it, and nothing's gonna change her mind. In the end, her family do accept her wishes, and then Catherine has a room of her own. Where she can fast as much as she wants, and she can perform as many religious acts of devotion as she
So,
wanted to.
question, and I ask this fully knowing that you might not know the answer to this. Why didn't they send her to a convent if she
We
like,
will we
we'll
will
get there.
get yeah we
Okay.
will get there. I think they were quite resistant to that, and whilst they accepted that this is what she wanted to do, I think they were still thinking maybe it's a
She's
phase,
young,
maybe
like,
she'll
yeah,
grow
yeah,
out
yeah,
of
yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
she's only
Yeah.
16, maybe when she's 18, maybe
Yeah,
she
I
just
suppose,
hasn't that. Yeah,
joining a convent is quite extreme, particularly, like, a lot of them once you cast off your old identity, so I guess that also they
yeah,
probably wouldn't really see her again if she joined one, but
yeah,
yeah, that's all I was thinking. I was like, I feel like there's
but
a place for this.
hold that thought, but
Okay.
just to sum up where she is, like teenage Catherine, so she was existing very restricted diet.
Mhm.
She ends up sleeping on 2 wooden planks, so just she kind of gets rid of her bed and just sleeps on these planks, and
Sure.
then she prays a lot. So any time that she's not doing anything, she would just be like
So
knelt
she took that
on.
whole, like, minimalism, like, life of is it
Yeah.
ascetic? Is that
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
and it's very much in that kind of Dominican order.
Yes.
Yeah. So, speaking of religious orders, eventually Catherine herself wanted to join an order of devout women. She wanted to join an order called the Mantellates, which I may be
Mhm.
pronouncing wrong. She didn't want to join as a nun. She wanted to go and be a part of that kind of society, but she didn't want. I think this is what is really interesting about her, and the idea that Raymond said, she had a maturity that was way above men, and that in that early vision, Jesus gave her a cross like he would do with bishops. I think she saw herself as more than a nun.
Yeah.
So she didn't want to. to join as a nun, but she did want to go and live in this religious order. Her mum didn't want her to do this. I think partly she was thinking, you know, maybe she can still get married, but her main thing was her daughter was not very well. You're seeing how much she's eating, and
Yeah.
she's
And if
so
she's
she
not
was
eating meat, like at this
yeah
period of time, I don't know how diverse the diet was in
yeah
14th century Siena.
so she took Catherine to the baths in the village Bagno Vinoni, and this Raymond describes as her mother acting as the accomplice of Satan. And I think it's
Oh,
really interesting the way that Raymond especially frames a lot of people in Catherine's life, her family, and then later people in the church as acting on behalf of Satan or in accordance with Satan.
mhm.
And if we are looking at this from a Gothic perspective, then it is very, this whole good versus evil binary, but it also makes her agency and her decisions and her refusal to do that in a way almost, I can see why she is so revered as a saint.
Yeah.
Because it is, if your adversary is literally Satan and you're
The
holding
adversary is
firm.
literally the adversary.
Yeah, exactly. Catherine at these baths ended up getting even more ill. She developed a quite violent rash, and
Ew.
a fever. But again, Raymond's hagiography is very weird in how he describes this. So he says that Catherine combated with invincible arms, and all the
Oh.
attacks of the devil turned to her advantage. She found a method of torturing her body, for, under pretext of bathing herself better, she approached the canals by which the sulphurous waters entered the baths, and she endured the burning heat on her uncovered and delicate flesh to such a degree that she suffered more than when scouring herself with iron chains. And apparently, Raymond says that Catherine reported that when there, I thought much on the pains of hell and of purgatory. So I think, again,
That's pretty
Catherine,
intense.
it's intense. Yeah, Catherine is very intense. And I think she sees this as a way to punish herself and to also
Mhm.
endure. So she's framing the torments of the hot waters,
Yeah.
sulphurous, which are, sulfur is very much kind of associated with Satan and
Yeah.
hell. She's enduring these heat, this hot water, burning water, in order to say, look, this is what Satan can do to me, and I'm going to survive.
No
Um,
wonder she got sick.
I mean, yeah, I know. It's kind of like, Catherine, you were doing this to yourself. You being sick is not helpful to anyone. I don't know why you're doing this. But yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I know it is it's not an not what's the word? Like it's not an uncommon part of
hmm,
both Catholicism and Orthodoxy to like do self-flagellation. But it is a really like I find the idea of a teenage girl, like not to kind of over pathologize or psychoanalyze, but
yeah,
like for a teenage girl to be doing this, like there is something about the way that teenage girls think and feel and the way that hormones like that kind of concoction like again like so maybe trigger warning self-harm but there is this long-standing idea between like obsession and self-harm
hmm,
in teenage girls and then you've got but because it's like a religious obsession it's like oh wow like what an amazing saintly
yeah.
devoted like individual. I can only imagine being her mum.
Well, I know, especially because you love this child so much, and you've seen her twin die not long after being born, and then you're having to watch her punish herself. It's
Mhm.
quite difficult. And so ultimately, Catherine's mum does relent, and she allows Catherine to join the order of women, the Mantelate, or they're also known as the Sisters of Penance, because I think she's thinking, if my actions are spurring my daughter on to harm herself, I don't want her to do that. So it is that kind of, it's difficult for us, I think, with our modern knowledge and perspective to look at stories like this and histories and not think that she must have been very, very ill. I mean, she was ill, but also not just physically, but it's difficult, isn't it? It is.
Yeah,
difficult.
That kind of like manifestation of behavior is really interesting. And it is, I think, as much as like it would be ethically improper to kind of ascribe something to someone without, all the context and without fully understanding, like, as two autistic women, it's one, you're like, but also with just our knowledge of like modern medicine and we know that like the reason that a lot of people, when they have delusions of grandeur, either think they're God or the second coming, or that they think they're speaking to Jesus, is because of the prevalence of religious iconography in our society. Like, there's lots of things that we know now that do make you look back differently and think like, I wonder what was actually going on there, because that is super fucking intense.
It's so intense. It doesn't stop being intense, by the way. Her entire life is
I can imagine it
intense
just
in
gets
this way.
more.
So while she's in this order, so she doesn't take the vows of the order.
Okay.
But I think partly because for her, she's already taken that vow of virginity and dedicated herself to her divine spouse, so she doesn't need to do that. But she is allowed to live there, and also to live at home, and to be a part of this order.
Like she doesn't want to be part of the group. That she's like got her own internal, like almost theology.
Yeah. And so again, her ideal life she's able to live while she's here. She eats very little. She again sleeps on wooden planks. She observed her vows of virginity and also of poverty. And she also would often observe like a strict vow of silence, apart from when she was in confession. So I think it's very, very regimented, very much about rituals and routines, and being very strict with what she's allowing herself to do. So we're now talking about the kind of adult Catherine.
Yeah.
She's been continuing to see visions, and all throughout her childhood she was continuing to see visions. She wanted to make sure that the visions that she was seeing were actually from God and that they weren't from Satan, so that she wasn't being deceived. And Raymond actually talks about, in a kind of offhanded kind of way, like there were lots of women who were deluded by the seductions of Satan. So this idea that there are lots of other women out there who were proclaiming to have these visions, but actually they were false visions. They were either made up by the women, or they were just being deceived by Satan. So I did find that quite funny.
This is what always gets me about this stuff. Like, for context, last night I had just watched the new Netflix documentary, Trust Me, False Prophet, which is about Sam Bateman and the fallout in the FLDS after Warren Jeffs was arrested. But he basically turns around and he's like, Warren Jeffs is speaking through me, and I'm the new prophet. And obviously not everyone, but some of them are just like, yeah. And like, again, like Warren Jeffs is too, like, you can just turn around and be like, God speaks to me, I'm the prophet. And it's kind of up to like whether or not you're a man or a woman, whereabouts you are in the society, like. And I do always love it in like cult stories where someone else just starts being like, I also received a divine message, and they said that I should get all the money now, and
Well,
They're like,
it's
no,
like
you don't get the divine message, only me.
it's like in politics, though, isn't it? Where everyone claims that not everyone, but so many people claim that they have chosen to stand because of their religious beliefs and their, their religious god or
I've been
gods
called to it.
have called them to it. And if they win, then it shows, this is God's
Yeah.
choice, or, God's possessive and plural there, whichever way.
Yeah.
This isn't something that is specific to Christianity. This happens in all
No.
religious cultures and things, where you can use religion to support your claim to power. But yeah, I think I think I see what Raymond is trying to do here. He's trying to separate out Catherine's
Her
visions and
from,
say these are legitimate. I just thought it was funny.
that is funny.
So what Catherine does is she asks her
Oh my
divine
god, Catherine's
spouse.
a pick-me.
Yeah, 100%. So she asks God, how do I know that, what are your visions? And God replies, my visions commence by terror and continue in peace. Their arrival or presentation is attended with a certain bitterness, which little by little changes into sweetness. The contrary happens in the visions of the bad spirit. They begin with a certain joy, but always terminate by plunging the soul into trouble. I thought that was really interesting, especially the bit about divine visions in how it links to the Gothic idea of
Yeah.
sublime.
Yeah.
It is this kind of terrifying or inspiring, awful kind of vision, and then
But
afterwards
it's
you have
transportative and transformative
yeah. So it is terrifying, but in a way that expands your soul and allows in that sweetness. So I did think that was a really interesting
Yeah,
way.
that's really fascinating.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, you have bad visions, Satan's visions. That they always start with a seduction, and then they kind of ratchet
Yes.
up into something
Like in The
bad.
Monk.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that this is, if someone wants to do some work into Gothic visions and how
Yeah.
visions, real life or alleged, from these individuals and how they correspond to terror and horror and visions in Gothic novels, I think there's definitely something there, because
Definitely.
it's so Gothic, the way that the way that and even she's having this conversation, this dialogue with her divine
God.
spouse. I think that it's if you believe, I'm not saying what, if you believe that this is what happened, then that is it's quite terrifying, actually, to be a young
Yeah.
girl, to have these visions, and then to
Terrifying.
have this this ability. She asks and it is answered. So she's living a life of devotion. She's having these visions. She's praying and doing a lot of kind of pious devotions. But when she wasn't doing that, which did obviously take up a lot of her time, she spent a lot of time trying to help the poor and the sick. And content warning, this bit is going to get gross.
Oh no.
So yeah.
Oh no.
Oh no. So in one instance, again recounted by Raymond, Catherine helps a poor woman who has a horrible illness like leprosy. And her illness got so bad that the hospital that this woman was at started to make preparations to move her out of the city of Siena. If we move her out of the city, she's no longer our problem and we don't have to deal with her horrible illness. Catherine's like, no, we can't do that. That's horrible. So she hastened to the hospital, visited the leper, and kissed her. And then she would visit this woman every morning and every night. She apparently ended up contracting leprosy on her hands. And her family had been like, you need to stop going to this woman because you're going to get ill. And then she did. But once the woman died, then Catherine was miraculously healed. So you have this idea of like...
Sounds more like contact dermatitis.
This woman has this illness that grosses people out
Mhm.
so much that they're like, we need to get her out of this city. One, because we don't want it to spread to other people, but also we don't want to look after her. Catherine's like, no, that's not what God would do. I'm gonna
Yeah.
help this woman. She kisses
Yeah.
her, and is, you know, probably, maybe that's unnecessary, I don't know.
I
But
was
she
gonna
ends up
say, consent.
contracting getting this illness herself, but then she's healed. So I guess if we're thinking about like a saintly narrative, this is evidence of
Yeah.
her being saintly and then being rewarded
Mhm.
with a miracle. There's another instance though, and this involves a sister of the penance of Saint Dominic, the kind of order that Catherine
Mhm.
was associated with, called Andrea, and she becomes very, very ill with breast cancer. Raymond describes her illness as being so bad that it led to, quote, an odour from this wound which was so disgusting that it was impossible to approach her without firmly closing the nostrils. So that,
Oof.
yeah, so it is, again, you have this very ill woman who people are maybe not wanting to be near her, or, you know, avoiding her altogether because there's this horrible odor, as well as the
Yeah.
kind of the visuals and everything.
Yeah. Like a festering wound.
Yes. So others refuse to tend to this woman, but not Catherine.
Not Catherine.
So I'll read from Raymond's
Oh
book
gosh.
again. One
I'm not sure
day,
about this Raymond.
one day, as the saint uncovered the wound, a suffocating odour issued from it. Her will, reposing on that of Jesus Christ, is not moved, but her stomach turns and endangers vomiting. As soon as she perceives it, she becomes angry with herself, reproaching herself with this weakness. What, she said, thou art disgusted at thy sister, who is redeemed by the blood of Jesus Christ? Mayest thou also fall sick, and become in even worse condition? Thou shalt not remain unpunished. I'm going to pause here before we resume to ask what Catherine does next. But I think it is interesting that she isn't kind of, she wants to help this woman, but her stomach is so revulsed that she's kind of almost vomiting. And so she then rebukes herself and is like, no, like, you know, this woman is a Christian, and if you don't help her, then you should be punished.
I mean,
Lauren,
at this
what do
point, I
you...
wouldn't be surprised if she like cut her nose off or something so she couldn't smell it.
Is that what you think happens? Okay.
I don't know. At this point, I'm like, it's going to be something extreme.
Yeah, okay. So again, I'm going to quote Raymond, and apologies, you have been warned, this is very gross. Immediately, stooping down over the breast of the cancerous woman, she applied her mouth to the ulcer until she was sensible of having overcome her disgust and triumphed over that natural revolt. So here,
That's so unsanitary.
I think apologies. It's very gross, but I think it is really important when
Can I just say, she's just putting a mouth on these women. Like, these are sick, dying women. Stop putting your mouth on these women. Have some respect for their bodily autonomy.
I think though, like, yes, it is gross and it is disgusting, but I think it does illustrate Catherine and her kind of personality, which is perseverance and, you know, seeing a challenge and going for it. Whether we agree with her choices, whatever, she is very, very strong-willed.
Listen,
and I also,
I'm not questioning her commitment to the cause. I just think that some of her methods are unnecessary.
Yes,
from
but
multiple different perspectives.
but let's also remember that this was at a time where, like, even just washing your hands wasn't seen as medically necessary.
Yes, I know.
So I think there was our understanding of hygiene and medicine and care is slightly different. With that being said, I do think that the fact that Raymond is including this and is writing it in this way does show that this is a weird thing to do, and also very dangerous,
Yeah.
because, you know, just as she potentially contracted leprosy, or maybe she didn't, I don't know, she might very well have contracted something from this.
Well, if it's like a festering wound, like that implies like that's not caused by cancer. That's like infection,
Yeah.
sepsis, like who knows? It's probably also I know they didn't know this, but like it's clearly a fucking disgusting, festering, probably gangrenous wound, and you're like, let me just put my mouth on it so I can overcome.
When I was doing my research for my essay on martyrs, I read this, and honestly I had to stop and pause because it is so disgusting. But I think, again, if we're looking at the Gothicness of this, we
Oh
can think
yeah.
about something like the Abject,
Yeah.
and Kristeva's work, and how so much, especially going into the 19th and 20th and 21st century, so much Gothic and horror narratives are about that abject disgust and that
Yeah.
revulsion, which is different from that idea of terror that we had in the visions. And that's why I wanted to include it, even though it is gross, and it's about to get grosser.
God. I just needed to stop putting her mouth on people that are suffering, not just because it's terribly unhygienic. Just if I was like ill and some woman just came in and like fucking tongued my gangrenous wound, I'd be like, get the fuck off me.
Yes, I agree.
Sorry,
Unfortunately,
really...
yeah, unfortunately, we are not Catherine. Catherine makes other decisions. So to continue, so she is still caring for this woman. We're still talking about Andrea. And then Raymond talks about another incident involving this woman where, guess who also makes an appearance? Another
A real
character. Another character that
Saint
we've
Nick?
also meant. No. Someone who has been intimately involved with Catherine's life up until this point. Maybe in a kind of adversarial role.
The devil.
Yes. Okay.
I was like, okay, is it a real person? Is it like, is it Jesus? Like, is it St. Paul? Like,
oh, well, actually, okay, we'll come back to that, what you just said
oh my
there.
gosh.
But yeah, so later on, one day, as the servant of God uncovered the horrible ulcer to wash it, the infected odour which arose from it inspired a violent disgust, which the devil strove to increase. Her stomach, so this is Catherine, her stomach bounded with nausea. This repulse was so much more painful to her, as just then the new victories which she had gained by the grace of the Holy Spirit had helped her to acquire new victories. So initially having, put her mouth to the kind of cancerous sores, she's then gained these kind of new virtues, and now the devil is increasing the disgust and the odor and the grossness. And so
I'm just
Catherine is like,
imagining like the devil like with a like like
right.
what, or like wafting the smell towards.
Yeah.
He's like putting it in a gnome diffuser, like
yeah. I will make this woman break. Catherine is filled with a holy anger against herself, and she said, "Thou shalt swallow what inspires thee with horror." And immediately, collecting in a saucer the water which she had washed what flowed from the wound, she went aside and drank the whole. I recollected that one day, when others related this circumstance in her presence, she said to me in an undertone, "Father, I assure you that in my whole life I never tasted anything so sweet and agreeable."
Oh. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard. I'm a goddess.
I know,
That is
right?
fucking foul.
It's foul. It's horrible. But in this, here we have, this
Just drinking
woman,
like dirty pus-filled water.
this saintly woman who is being challenged by the devil. She's being confronted with these sulfurous odors. The devil is ratcheting up his attacks on her, and she is like, "No, I'm going to
I'm gonna
drink
out
this.
ick you.
I'm
You
going to
trying
out
to
ick
ick
you."
me?
But
I'm just imagining
it's-
her like making eye contact, like.
But what do you think about the fact that she claims that what
It
she
was sweet.
drank tasted sweet? Yeah.
I mean, that's like a. Is this like a weird fetish?
So, the final
I
thing
mean,
on this, yeah.
if I don't, again, I'm like, oh, don't pathologize. It's sounding incredibly like religious delusion.
Mm,
And obviously she's saying that in retrospect, like, to me, this is sounding more and more and more like someone who is experiencing like religious psychosis.
yeah.
And but also to force yourself to, like, every single part of you wants to not do that. Like, we know that like the natural responses we have in our body, like, it's like how, we flint. It's plucking your eyebrows is a great example. Like, it takes you a long time to not feel like flinch and feel pain when you learn to pluck your eyebrows as a human being. Forcing yourself to drink something like that, like, people gag when they try to drink like Pepto-Bismol and like medicine and stuff like that. Like, the amount of, it's fortitude to a point of delusion. You almost have to be able to delude yourself to be able to actually swallow something like that. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if she did believe that, because I think that's not resolve. It's got to be almost delusion to be able to do something like that.
And I think that it is, with the previous incident, it is interesting that her family are again concerned for her health and saying, be careful for yourself, being around sick and infected people, and having a kind of disregard for her own well-being to the point of becoming, potentially becoming infected, but also, going against conventions of care and I guess what we would now consider medical hygiene to
Yeah.
endanger her own body. It is, well, it's that kind of thing that if you endanger yourself so much that you then become ill and die, you can't help anyone else.
Yeah.
And I guess for her, the justification is that, but when I tasted it, it was sweet. And then also look at all this good that I've done. So there is that kind of balance, I guess, in terms of whether we're looking at this from as a historical person or as a saint.
Well, either which way, she's being reinforced. Whether or not you believe it's divine
yes.
or not,
Yeah.
her beliefs are being reinforced by certain outcomes.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, to conclude this gross episode, so this is the last thing about this grossness. It's going to be a different kind of gross. I still think this is gross, but it's not going to be that that level of gross. But talking about, who else enters this instance, this episode, and also the kind of rewards that Catherine envisages for herself and that are reinforced by the religious narrative and society around her. So after this incident, Catherine has another vision. So she is, again, throughout her life, she's constantly having visions, but this one is specifically about, it's in response to her kind of adversarial interaction with Satan and this woman, and Andrea. She has a vision of Christ where she's shown his 5 sacred wounds. So these are the wounds that are associated with his crucifixion. You have the wounds on his head, his side wounds, his kind of hands and feet, all of that kind of stuff. As part of this vision, he so Jesus Christ places the right hand on Catherine's neck. He drew her to the wound on his sacred side, saying to her, "Drink, daughter, that luscious beverage which flows from my side. It will inebriate thy soul with sweetness, and will also plunge in a sea of delight thy body." So I think this is, especially when we're talking about women saints in this period, there is a lot of interaction with specifically Christ's side wound, in that space, either seeing it as something tangible that you can touch, but here it's a kind of the part, part of the Eucharist, where in every Christian mass and every Christian service, you drink wine that represents the body of Christ. And in Catholicism, they have the doctrine of transubstantiation, where as part of the Eucharist, the wine doesn't symbolically represent, it is transubstantiated, it is transformed into the literal blood of Christ. So you are essentially drinking Christ's blood. And here in this vision, Christ is leading her head to his side wound to drink from the source, which is, I think, quite a gross image, but also, I guess, in a way that borders again on that terror and sublime. It is, in a religious context, if these are your beliefs, also something awe-inspiring and terrific.
Yeah. I don't want to be like, I don't even know what the right word for is. Like, is it do I mean sacrilegious? Do I mean disrespectful? Like, there is something incredibly sexual.
No, absolutely. I think that is there, and she's already, so but by this point, for years, she's been considering God and Christ as her divine spouse. I didn't include this, but she had another vision where she was given a ring, like a marital ring that was actually the foreskin of Jesus. But again, like, in this period, for women who are nuns or religious women, saints, there was often this sexual element to their relationship with Christ, and a lot of them, in having that vow of virginity and not wanting to be with men, it didn't necessarily mean that they weren't still sexual or having sexual experiences, or having experiences that maybe are to some degree sexual, but not necessarily, like, consciously sexual.
An element of eroticism.
Yes,
I suppose it's probably more eroticism than it is sexual.
No, that is exactly what I was trying to think of. It is very erotic, and we see lots of images of Christ's side wound that looks almost vaginal, and it's very much that in that kind of being a female, kind of erotic wound, but also something that can connect women to the, spiritually but erotically, to that kind of relationship with with God.
It's also really interesting, like, obviously this is more modern because, you know, vampires in the 14th century were very different things, but a lot of vampire media, particularly like the transform, like if someone is being turned into a vampire, the way that they like film and position and illustrate whatever media it is, like the human beings like drinking the blood of the vampire or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there is an overtly sexual element to vampirism, but that's very interesting there, that there's obviously like a connection between
I think, yeah, no, I
that.
think so. And I think, as you know, as we delve more into these individuals, then I think hopefully we'll see that, yes, although this story was very gross, there are these elements that I think, you know, you think that vampire media today is scandalous. No, it's not really. Because these women and these stories did it first. But yeah, so I think for Catherine, this was very much a kind of a reward.
Yes,
And
religious
she's
ecstasy.
absolutely, yeah. So moving into her later life, and I don't want to go into this too much just because we've spent a lot of time on her visions and
On the
everything.
gross stuff.
But to kind of, and also, so I want to talk about her influence on politics, but I'm not going to go into too much detail because this would need to be its own episode. But I want to flag that she was very influential and very much a badass. So whilst I
Ooh.
think that there are lots of questionable things, and maybe we can think about, without diagnosing her, you know, how potentially she was perhaps someone who was quite ill. She was also very individual and very steadfast in her beliefs and in what she wanted to do, and she went out and did it. So she was part of a religious order, as I said, but she wasn't a nun, and she never ever in her life officially took the vows. She became known as Santa Donna, or a holy woman in her kind of area of Siena, and eventually it's this reputation that led to her becoming involved in politics and eventually meeting with the Pope. So, you know, in terms of being a Catholic,
That's pretty much as high as it gets.
that's as high as it gets. She travelled across Italy. She interceded in papal politics. She sent a lot of letters to lots of really important people high up in the church. So you can go and read her letters. Like, there are published volumes of her letters. And some of her correspondences included the Pope. And we're talking about Pope Gregory the 11th. So she is, she's not a nun, but she's very important in
She's a
the
holy
church.
woman.
Yeah, and in the politics. Raymond claims that during these travels she actually received the stigmata. So these are where you would receive the 5 wounds of Christ, that we mentioned earlier.
Usually it's like on the hands, isn't it?
It's on the hands, it's on the feet, it's on the, you know, all of those 5 wounds. But apparently these were only visible to herself, and that's because that's what Catherine wanted. So I don't know, it's interesting, but
that's
sure.
like when you're a kid and you're like, I have a Pokemon, but only I can see it.
Yeah. In 1377 she returned to her home of Siena and she founded a women's monastery, and this had strict observances, and this was outside the city, in an old fortress. Following the death of Pope Gregory in Florence in March of 1378, there were riots. So this was quite, you know, it's quite a big thing. When the Pope dies, it's always leads to kind of turmoil and things.
Well,
And there were,
especially back then, because we're talking about like this is the era of like the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. Like,
exactly, yeah.
it wasn't just about. It's like, which family is the next pope going to come from?
Exactly. A lot of people were vying for power. The
We've got
Pope
a
was
lot of
very
warring
much
factions.
yeah. And in these riots, Catherine was almost assassinated because
Oof.
she had
So much
all these
influence.
connections. She had so much influence and so many connections to the late Pope. She was seen as a kind of important and potentially dangerous figure. also in this period, so between the years of 1377 and 1378, she compiled a major treatise, which she called the Dialogue of Divine Providence, which is your favourite subject. This is thought to have been dictated by Catherine whilst she was in ecstasy. So her visions and these periods where she would kind of be in this kind of high moment of euphoria were quite frequent throughout her life. And in this period, and this is also where she met Raymond, so he is her confessor in this period. But it's somebody else who she dictated these experiences to. They wrote them down, and then she would go and maybe re-edit some passages. And this work is a dialogue between God and a soul. So it is very much in that kind of mystical, theological strain, and also very much embodies what is at the heart of so much of Catherine's life, that mystical, but also personal connection that goes beyond like human life. It is very much elevated, transcendental, exactly. So if you want to go and read that, you can. I focus mainly on her life because I think that those kinds of dialogues and those kinds of treatises are interesting, but also it's, again, like her politics, you would need a whole other episode on those things. To conclude then, obviously we started this episode talking about the birth of Catherine, and we'll finish with her death, because it's often posthumously that a lot of legends are kind of created and ascribed, and then also you get the canonization of saints. So Catherine's final days were filmed with even more extreme fasting. She basically subsisted on just bread, and
bread
even
is
this
great.
It is great, but everyone should have a varied and balanced diet.
It's not really a 5 food group diet, is it?
She would have to be really like kind of made to eat anything at all, and eventually she died at the age of 33, so she is very young.
33.
30, well, if yeah, very
supposedly.
Supposedly. Initially, she was buried in the cemetery of Santa Maria Sopra Minerva, which is near the Pantheon in Rome. So you can go and visit her grave. There were many miracles that were said to take place at her grave. Eventually, Raymond, because such BFFs with Catherine, he decided to move her inside. So first she's buried in the cemetery of Santa Maria, and then he moved her inside, and this is where her body lies to this day. And we're talking about her body because her head was actually parted from her body and inserted into a gilt bust of bronze. So you'll often find this with saints, and we talked about this with Saint Nick as well. Remains and body parts are often moved or taken to different places. And so this bust containing her head was eventually taken to Sienna, which is her birthplace. It was carried through the city in a procession. So I think, she was very, very important and very revered. And it was taken to the Dominican church. It's still there today. So you can go and see the relic of Catherine's skull, which I think is exposed. So you can go and see the skull. And then eventually in 1461, Catherine was canonized by Pope Pius II. So that is the Gothic life of Saint Catherine. Very Gothic, maybe a bit more gross than you were expecting.
It was a lot more gross than I was expecting. Like, it's compared to Pickle Boys, this is there's something about, like, it made me think of, so I've talked before about the game series Dragon Age and how, like, gothic that is. And in Dragon Age, there's these things called the Darkspawn, and if humans consume Like, if you were fighting darkspawn and their like blood got in your mouth or something, like it can corrupt you and either kill you or turn you into a darkspawn. And there's this whole bit where they like force these women to like eat the darkspawn like grossness, and there's just some like, I feel like that's a recurring trope in a lot of like Gothic horror, is being forced to consume something that is disgusting,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is like revolting and potentially could like do terrible things to you. Yeah, just the image of that is so gross. Yeah, didn't go where I was expecting it to go.
No. Well,
especially because
Lauren,
I thought that she was a different Catherine.
Yeah. Well, you know, if you have any requests for future episodes, then Lauren, obviously you can just message me or tell me.
Yeah, well, I looked it up, and the Catherine
Yeah.
I was thinking of is Catherine of Alexandria,
Okay.
who
Yeah.
is the 4th century patron saint of
Yeah.
knowledge, and she's the one that a Roman emperor
Yeah.
put on a wheel and broke, like spiked wheel,
Yeah.
and that's where
Yeah.
Catherine wheels come from.
Okay.
So I was confusing the two completely as well, because I thought both of the Catherines were Italian, and Alexandria is definitely not in Italy. So
well,
she's probably Greek.
Yeah. Maybe we should look into more Catherines.
I mean,
Maybe we will
Catherine of
look at that.
Alexandria sounds like a bad bitch. Apparently, she
Yeah.
debated an
Yeah.
emperor.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I also have one that I don't know if I want you to make you do it or I want to tell you about it.
Okay.
But yeah, we should definitely do more female saints. I think we should do the Irish one, Bridget.
Okay. Yeah.
Because she's
Yeah,
maybe also like an actual Irish goddess that they just were like, there's a saint now.
I will add those to my list. I am collecting interesting saints that I think are gothically tinged.
Nice.
And
Well,
I hope this has I hope everyone that's listening, this hasn't grossed you out too much. Thank you if you've made it to the end. I will put a content warning in the description.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably should put a thing saying don't eat while you listen
Yeah,
to this
I will.
episode.
There will be lots of warnings. But yeah, thank you if you've made it this far. And also, Lauren has suggestions. But if you have suggestions for saints that you would like to be discussed in future episodes, then yeah, send them our way. Comment, send us an email, message us, any way that you want.
Any which way that you like. Well, thank you for that, Mary. As it turned out, I knew absolutely nothing about this woman. So I've learned a lot, and I like to go saint spotting when I visit places. So now I feel like I will be able to spot this Saint Catherine when I see her depicted. So thank you very much for that one. And to our lovely association members, as ever, stay safe and stay spooky. Until next time.
Stay safe and stay spooky.